I became Catholic almost 3 years ago, and yeah, it was good. And I feel, pretty Catholic how converts do. Anybody a convert in here? Yeah, well, we're the best. And so anyway, I'm real excited about being a Catholic. It's like when you go to youth camp and you come back and you're like, I got saved 50 times. Well, anyway, I went to New Zealand. I don't know. I don't even know where Heather is. A month ago, there she is. And I decided that because I love my faith so much, and because I love our Blessed Mother so much, I would get a tattoo that says "Totus Tuus" right here. So, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and just say that, if anybody wants to get a matching tattoo with me, that would be awesome. It would be like solidarity. Your parents won't care. It's cool. Just tell them I told you to, and then they'll get off my Facebook page and stuff. So, anyway, it is so good to be here with all of you today. I've got a husband, thank goodness, and I have 4 kids. I have an 8-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, a 1.5-year-old, and a 5-month-old. And I know. And my husband finally figured out what he is very best at. And I tell people we became Catholic and we couldn't stop breeding. So that's what happened. But anyway, it's good to be here to talk about life. I was in Mass with all of you this morning, and I'm watching this. I'm watching all these priests process, down the aisle and everything, and I'm just in tears because I don't even think sometimes we realize how awesome it is to be Catholic. I think sometimes we take it for granted because it's easy to take it for granted. Especially if you've kind of grown up in the faith, it's like, we're going to Mass, okay, all right, give me the missal, right, because we don't bring our Bibles. And, I'm kidding, that was a joke. And, bring your Bible to church. And so we take it for granted, but man, as somebody who's a convert, as somebody who grew up without the Eucharist, without the real presence of Christ, man, don't take that for granted. I mean, the verses today talks about, the Magi going and paying homage to the King. That's the sort of reverence that we should feel every time we go up to receive the Eucharist. I remember, because nothing is fast in the Catholic Church, so it took forever for me to become Catholic. And, I remember just longing, this desire for the Eucharist, in my soul, and so just, I don't know, I just wanted to say that. I'm sitting there in Mass today, and I'm just thinking, wow, we are so lucky. We are so lucky to have the fullness of truth. Amen? Amen. So, I didn't always do this. I didn't always stand up here and talk about being pro-life. One of the beauties of being Catholic is that we are authentically and completely pro-life. Not just pro-life, but we are whole life. We believe that life has inherent dignity from the moment of conception until natural death. And that's a very beautiful thing and something that is actually very unique to the Catholic Church. And so you may have come here today. I don't know why you'd come to my talk if you weren't pro-life, but maybe you came to my talk and you're on the fence and you're not really sure where you stand on the issues of life. Well, I'm here to tell you that we don't really have a choice in the Catholic Church, because when you took confirmation and you said that you were going to believe and abide by Catholic teaching, that meant that you were going to stand unequivocally, always, with no exception, against abortion, period. Some of the conference team, they were worried that I was going to be a little too pro-life in my talks, and I will be extra pro-life. So If you leave here and you feel offended by anything that I said, I'm not going to apologize, because what I am going to share with you today is truth. And as long as we share the truth, and as long as we share the truth in love, then we have nothing to apologize for. I worked at Planned Parenthood for 8 years of my life. I started working there in 2001. I was a college student. Like most of you, I went to Texas A&M University, and I was on campus there. I met a woman who was there to recruit college kids to be volunteers, to maybe potentially be staff, and to certainly be clients of Planned Parenthood. And I always tell people that where vulnerable women are, so is the abortion industry. And as most of you know, they are probably very prevalent on the majority of your college campuses. They have infiltrated private schools. They have infiltrated private Catholic schools. They have infiltrated our elementary schools, our grade schools. Their sex ed curriculum begins in kindergarten with 5-year-olds. There was a program that was approved by Planned Parenthood in a state, I think it was in Iowa, where the program consisted of taking stuffed animals into a kindergarten class and showing the kids graphic sexual positions with these stuffed animals. That is Planned Parenthood. Why would they do that? Why would they be so vile? Why would they be so blatant, so in your face with sexuality? Well, it's easy, because they want to get our kids hooked at a very young age. They want to get you hooked at a very young age. They want to develop a rapport with you and people much younger than you, so that whenever people do start having feelings of sexuality or whatever's going on, or they're questioning things, or they're in a relationship, that they will go to Planned Parenthood. They will not go to their parents, because they already have that relationship developed from many years before. That is their goal. And then their goal is to put you on some form of hormonal contraception, which they know has a really high failure rate. So you see these commercials about contraception being 99 point whatever percent effective. But I'm here to tell you that according to the Guttmacher Institute, Planned Parenthood's own research arm, so they have no reason to make up this statistic, honestly, because it makes them look very bad. 54% of women having abortions. So if you look into an abortion clinic and you look into a waiting room, more than half of the women sitting there waiting to have an abortion were using contraception at the time they got pregnant. 54% of women having abortions were using some form of contraception when they got pregnant. Contraception is there to fail you, and it is also there to continue to promote an abortion mentality. And we knew that at Planned Parenthood. And so we wanted to get all of these young people on birth control, particularly birth control pills, because birth control pills have a really high human error rate. I'm 34 years old, and I have a really hard time taking a pill every day. So I had a really hard time at 15 taking a birth control pill every day at the same time within 2 hours for it to be that 99% effective. And that's exactly how I got pregnant the first time with an unplanned pregnancy. And because I knew that I wasn't supposed to be having sex outside of marriage anyway, and I really needed my parents to continue to think that I was a virgin, and I didn't want to disappoint them, I walked into an abortion clinic and had my first abortion. That opened up the door that allowed abortion into my life, that allowed that sin into my life. About a year later, I was talking to that woman at the booth at Planned Parenthood on campus, and she asked me what I knew about Planned Parenthood, and I didn't really know anything about them because I didn't have my first abortion at a Planned Parenthood. And she started to tell me that Planned Parenthood was there to provide services to men and women who, without Planned Parenthood, would have nowhere else to go for health care. And because I didn't know that was a lie, I bought it. She told me that, abortion was a small part of what they did, but not to worry, it was only 3% of their services, just a little tiny, teeny tiny piece. See, I didn't know at the time that 3% equaled almost 330,000 abortions every year. And that's just at Planned Parenthood clinics. Nationwide, the abortion rate is about 1.2 million every year. I didn't know that. And when she told me that abortion needed to be safe, it needed to be accessible, it needed to be legal, because that's what was going to keep women from going to where? The back alleys, right? And so we don't want women to go to the back alleys and get hurt. So we need to have safe abortion clinics on every corner, easily accessible for these women. What I didn't realize at the time was that what takes place inside of one of these supposed safe and legal abortion clinics is no better than what took place in the back alleys. Abortion is still not safe for women now. It was not safe for women then. And abortion has never been safe for the unborn child. It's a strange thing when a surgical procedure is only considered a success if another human being dies. There's no other surgical procedure like that in the world. And so I got into Planned Parenthood believing that I was doing the right thing, that I was there to help women, that I was there to help solve problems. I was going to solve these women's problems. I didn't realize then that I was actually only compounding the problems in their life, that I was only creating more problems out of a crisis in their lives. I didn't realize, Planned Parenthood told me that, our goal there was to empower women, to liberate women. I didn't know that I would be talking girls as young as 10 into having abortion procedures when I took that job. I didn't know that I would be a person that provided a safe haven for those who trafficked and abused young women. Abortion is a great way to cover up the crime of a sex offender. And I was a part of that for 8 years. And I don't know, people say, gosh, how, you were raised in a Christian home. How did you get to that point? How did you get to a place where, you were doing this, where you woke up in the morning and you felt good about your job, where you felt good about being a POC technician? You know what POC is? Products of conception. What's that? I ask you a question, you answer back. That's the way it works. What's products of conception? It's the baby, right? But you can't say baby inside of an abortion facility. And so we said POC or POC, or if the staff was feeling funny, we would say that it stood for pieces of children. And I was trained as a POC technician, and my job as that technician was to take everything that was suctioned out of the woman's womb, dump it into a glass baking dish, spray it off with water, and piece the parts of those babies back together. Why did we do that? Because if we left a head or a leg or part of the spine or the head or some other part of that baby's body in the woman's uterus, she could develop a very serious infection and die. That was my job. People ask me, how did you do that? How did that not bug you? I don't know. I don't have a silver bullet answer for you on that, except to say that it happened just a little bit at a time. Because that's the way that sin works in your life. Just little sins here and there. And then one day you wake up and you don't even know who you are anymore. That day came for me in September of 2009. I was asked to assist in an ultrasound-guided abortion procedure. Ultrasounds are not typically used during an abortion procedure. Abortion is a blind surgical procedure. It's the only surgical procedure performed in the world where the doctor does not actually see what he's doing during the surgery. So he has an instrument called a cannula that's hooked up to a suction machine, and he blindly probes around in the woman's uterus until he thinks he has enough blood and tissue in a glass jar. It's no wonder we see complications like uterine perforation, where they will literally poke a hole right through the woman's uterus. I met a woman one time that almost died on an abortion clinic table. They punctured her uterus, and actually that cannula, that suction tube, went up into her bowel. I met a woman one time that had a safe and legal abortion procedure at a Planned Parenthood clinic, and she knew she had some sort of complication during the abortion, but they wouldn't tell her what it was. And a few days later, she spiked a high fever, went to the emergency room, and they told her that during the abortion procedure, the abortionist had punctured her uterus with an instrument that was not sterile. And because of that, she had developed gangrene over all of her reproductive organs, and at the age of 21 had to have an emergency hysterectomy. That is the reality of safe and legal abortion in our society. Abortion is never safe, but unfortunately it is legal. And so this day in September, I was assisting. This doctor was visiting from another clinic, and he was going to show me what actually took place inside the woman's womb during an abortion. And I thought, okay, that sounds good to me, and I wanted to see what this looked like. And so my job during the abortion was to hold the ultrasound probe on the woman's abdomen so that he could, in his words, visualize his target. And I stood there, we did the measurements. The baby was 13 weeks. At 13 weeks, are there arms and legs, fingers and toes, heartbeat, brain waves, internal organs? Yep, everything's there. So everything that we have, a baby in the womb also has at 13 weeks. And I knew that. I mean, I have an 8-year-old, right? So I've only been out of the industry 5 years. I remember being pregnant with my daughter, Grace, when I worked at the abortion clinic. And when I was 12 weeks pregnant with my daughter, she was a baby. But I guess my baby was a baby because my baby was wanted. But if a baby was unwanted, then it was just tissue. That was the lie that I lived in every day for 8 years. And so standing there watching this abortion about to take place, I watched on the ultrasound as this instrument went into the woman's womb, and I watched it go right up next to the side of this child. And when it touched his side, the baby jumped. And he began flailing his arms and legs as if he were trying to move away from that abortion instrument, but there was nowhere for him to go. And the doctor asked the technician to turn the suction on, and he said, "Beam me up, Scotty." And I think people assume that what I saw next was the worst part, that seeing a child become dismembered in his mother's womb was the worst part. But, I mean, that was bad, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that I just stood there and I did nothing. It took me about a week to leave. I didn't want to leave my job. I didn't want to leave my friends. I didn't want to leave the money I made. But in the end, I knew I had to get out. And that, even 5 years, more than 5 years have passed. And even still today, as I tell you this story, and I tell this story over and over and over again, every time my mind can't help but go back to that moment when I just stood there and watched a baby be killed right in front of my face. And I can't help but think, what if I had spoken up? I mean, what ifs are dangerous. They don't lead you down any road that's good for you. But what if I had? What if I had said something? What if I had yelled out for them to stop? What if I had leaned down and sat that woman up and said, look at your baby? What would have happened? I don't know. Maybe she would have chosen life. Maybe that little boy would be here today. He would be 4. See, I don't know. And the sad thing is that I'll never know. Because I didn't stand up that day. I just stood there because that's what was convenient for me at the time. I didn't want to break the status quo. I just wanted to sit there and justify why what I saw was okay.
So far, our SEEK experience has been really great. I got to meet new friends from Fullerton as well. And I think just the talks have been really inspiring. And overall, I've gotten a lot of good advice for what moves me, and I'm still seeking for Christ.
About 3,400 babies die every day from abortion. Abortion exists because of our silence. I mean, you're here because I believe that you're here because you want to be a people of action, right? I mean, people come to me and they, oh, Abby, I pray for an end to abortion all the time. And I go, that's great. What else do you do? I'm willing to come out and say abortion is wrong all the time, every time, no matter how the baby was conceived, no matter what the mother's health is like. Abortion, killing a baby deliberately is wrong each and every time.